Now, US President Donald Trump has hinted on plans to impose a 50% tariff on the industrial metal in the latest escalation of his trade war, despite extending the deadline on reciprocal tariff hikes on goods from key economies until the 1st of August. Professor Kenny Ife, lead consultant, industry and private sector development at ECOWAS Commission, joins me now to examine the impact on Africa's private sector. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today, Prof. Really, first and foremost, the consensus, the discourse around the US tariffs was expected around the July 9th deadline. We also have a new date, August the 1st. Looking at the US tariffs, the talks and some of the moves and letters we've had from US President Trump, what's next for global trade on the back of these latest developments?
Well, I don't think it's unexpected. His current second move after the Liberation Day is just not unexpected. I mean, he has already beaten a retreat because he got pushed back from unexpected quarters. His actions hit the capital market. Then he began to see reactions from the depositors, the likes of Europe and Japan and Canada, taking down their investments. He wasn't expecting that. And now the thing is this. What lesson he hasn't learned, and I'm sure he's still to learn those lessons, is that hike in tariff actually hurts the economy more than he ever envisaged. He doesn't want to look at what Donald Trump has expressed in the past. When you have high tariff wars, what you are doing is you are putting those import and export jobs in America, about 10 million jobs, you are putting them at risk because half of them are on import, half are on export. Then you're also going to translate to high prices for local consumers. And he doesn't even realize that when you have a high tariff war, you are now going to reduce the competitiveness of the economy because they will stop innovating. They run behind the tariff wall. They start looking for something, all kinds of things. And meanwhile, they'll be losing competitiveness. And when the other parties intervene and then bring their own tariff, you will now have those jobs at risk on both counts. So he's still to experience that. So that's why he's still going on. But at least we're beginning to get used to his retreat. So he's retreated. But remember what I told you before in our interview. He has 4 objectives. Objective number 1 is to avoid a third world war, and he's doing well with that by talking to Russia. Objective number 2 was to scuttle the entire global trade and see what he can get away with. He's struggling with that, and he's beating back. Then the third one is to have a direct conflict with China, and he's just moving round and around it. And the third final one is currency war. And that's where it's all going to end. Currency war against the use of dollar in the traditional role of being the 60% of reserves, and they have it. All of that are all up for grab. But how is Africa going to react to this? For it, it's not much of Africa. It's only 4 countries in Africa, in the north, south, east, and west, which is Ethiopia on the east, Nigeria on the west, Egypt on the north, and the South Africa. South Africa is more hit because he's already part of he's already taking a very high rate, and he's going to get extra 10%. Nigeria had 14%. We're going to have another 10%. But if you look at Nigerian case, it's not really that much, to be honest, because 90% of what we trade with the US is just crude oil. The other ones are urea and small cocoa and small refined products. We don't even have enough. Dangote has capacity for 650,000 barrels a day, and it's only getting 70,000 barrels from NNPC. We need all that oil. And secondly, American trade with Nigeria, all we're sending in there is 1.57 trillion and 1.54 trillion naira worth of goods. BRICS nations, our trade with them is 5.4 trillion. In fact, India alone is almost twice the size of the trade with America. India is coming in at 2.84 trillion, followed by Indonesia, which is 1.1 trillion, and then South Africa, 7 billion, and China. So we're actually, not to be honest, but this is diplomacy. You have to keep talking, you have to keep negotiating. But to be honest with you, whether we should run scared is a different matter. I don't think we should run scared because we have an alternative. The alternative for Africa is to trade among yourselves, increase that tempo of trade. 80% of whatever any African country would like to import can be sourced somewhere in Africa. And that is the message. Last month, I was in an ECOWAS mission where OECD came and displayed a result showing that, countering our belief that the level of intra-regional trade is 11, 12%, they actually showed that it's 39%. We didn't know that. So we're actually trading with ourselves much more than we reckon with because of a high level of informal trade. So we need to continue to do that because we now have a Pan-African payment settlement system that excludes dollar out of the equation, and then we can do more within our own currencies. Then we have currency swap with China and others that can do more. So we have so much more leverage by facing and intensifying intra-regional trade, and then somehow call that bluff. And if you are telling me whether we should abandon BRICS, I don't think we should consider that.
Prof, we have less than a minute to wrap up this conversation now. In terms of looking at what's next as well, now, this definitely is not the end of the hits from the Trump administration. And you've touched on Africa's posture, looking at our trading volume within the continent. But in terms of now incentives to catalyze the sort of trade we have here in country and the drive towards fresh alignments, what should be Nigeria's agenda going forward?
Well, we know that the AGOA is in cul-de-sac. Even if you renew AGOA, you can't escape the 10% baseline. So I wouldn't spend my time there, but you have to talk. You just keep talking. You don't abandon talking. But face decisively, strengthening your link with the BRICS, increase your export, whatever is displayed, you can find China and India buy all the oil that we could, so they have capacity to buy more. Then do the intra-regional trade. Focus more on value addition, because when you add value, you get at least 3 times more value from just adding 30% value addition. You can actually earn 3 times more. That's where they should be going to. I'm not talking about cocoa this, cocoa that. Raise it to minimum. We are passing a law of, I think it's almost been passed now, that minimum of 30% value addition for any product, anything originating from Nigeria, 30%. That gives more value. And that is our ETLS, 30% value addition, rule of origin. So we're forcing that in Africa, and we're telling others to do the same. So it is not going to be business as usual, because it's pushing us to have Nigeria first, Africa first. And that's the way it has to go. So thanks to Donald Trump for pushing that policy. And we're going to take it and run with it.
It's definitely forcing a rethink, and it's not business as usual. Prof, would leave the conversation here for now. Thank you for your time in the show today. That is Ken Ife, lead consultant, industry and private sector development at ECOWAS Commission.